A blow for the federal government after it agreed to pay compensation to almost 2,000 detainees from Manus Island. The $70 million settlement represents the largest human rights class action in Australia. Dougal Beattie again.
On the day a 6-month trial was set to begin, it was announced a settlement had been reached.
We'll simply adjourn the proceedings.
The federal government and security companies agreed to pay $70 million to 1,905 former Manus Island detainees.
No amount of money is going to be able to fully recognise the terrible conditions that these detainees have had to endure.
Lawyers had alleged the Commonwealth breached its duty of care, causing physical and psychological harm, and claims the detainees were falsely imprisoned.
But we're hopeful that with today's settlement, they can begin to provide an opportunity to help put this dark chapter of their lives behind them.
But the thought of paying $20 million in legal costs and an average of $35,000 to each asylum seeker has outraged some.
I don't know about you, but I feel like we've been taken for mugs.
Others say the government didn't want its dirty laundry being aired in court.
This is proof that our response to asylum seekers is unethical.
Peter Dutton has only agreed to this settlement in order to keep the full horror of what is going on Manus Island hidden from the Australian people.
But the settlement wasn't an admission of liability by the government. It strongly refutes the claims, blaming Labor, which opened the centre in 2012.
The fact is that Labor presided over a complete mess.
The conditional settlement still needs to be approved by the Supreme Court of Victoria, but lawyers hope the compensation will be delivered to detainees by October. Each claim will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Dougal Beattie, 9 News.
The federal government has agreed to pay a record $70 million settlement to Manus Island detainees. It follows a 3-year court battle by 1,900 asylum seekers who lodged a class action for cruel treatment and false imprisonment.
This is a rare sight on Manus Island, but today, after a 3-year court battle, the federal government settled the lawsuit lodged by 1,900 detainees, agreeing to pay them $70 million.
An important step towards recognising the extremely hostile conditions that the detainees have had to endure.
The historic deal is the biggest of any human rights class action in Australian legal history. Lead plaintiff Majid Kamazay issued a statement through his lawyers welcoming the news, saying, "I was in pain every minute of every day on Manus Island. I cried every night until I had nothing left." But the Commonwealth's agreement wasn't without conditions.
They still continue to deny liability.
Although the plaintiff's legal team questioned the point.
Whether indeed it passes the pub test.
In Parliament, the federal government simply passed the buck.
As a result of the disastrous policies set up by the Labor Party, an action taken against the Commonwealth, which has resulted in a settlement today of $70 million being paid to plaintiffs, represented by none other than the ambulance-chasing lawyer firm of Slater Gordon.
The next step for lawyers is to put a payment plan before the courts for approval, with compensation amounts expected to vary on a case-by-case basis, depending on each detainee's injuries, pain and suffering. Payment should be finalised by the end of October. Around 900 asylum seekers remain on the island. Christy Mayer, 7 News.